Hi, this is Zachary Rosa with ECSIQ. Excited to be here. Today we're going to be talking about the customer service skill of telephone communications. Before I dive into that, just so you know, if you're preparing for an interview last minute, there's an amazing resource out there. It's going to provide you with everything you'll need to know to ace your customer service interview in just 1 hour. The link's included in the description below. If that fits something you need, check it out. All right, so let's talk about your telephone communication skills. We're going to be covering in this video first impressions, extending an introduction, importance of smiling and breathing, focusing and clarification, enunciation, and projection. So let's dive right into it. Regarding first impressions, they're typically developed within the first 10 to 30 seconds. So what are some ways you can better your first impressions that you make with either a customer or with your interviewer? Well, first, watch your tone. Your tone essentially is going to give away your interest in the conversation or not. So if you don't have good tone, if you're not having the proper vocal intonations, if you're not sounding interested or engaged in the conversation, then that's going to come across within the first 10 to 30 seconds. So it's really important that you focus on sounding interested in the first 10 to 30 seconds. The other thing that's going to matter is your volume. Are you really engaged? Are you saying things loud enough but then not too loud? If you come across as too loud, you're going to sound a little pushy, and it's not going to be as good as just coming across as just enough so that everyone can hear what you're saying. And then also you have room now to get louder when you want to get passionate about something, and then to get quieter when it's something that's not so important or when it's something sad or emotional, etc. All right, and the other thing I want to cover here is clarity. Be extremely clear with what you're saying, especially in the 10 to 30 seconds, because I know when I pick the phone up and I'm talking with a customer service representative, if they pick up the phone and immediately it's right off the bat speed talking, I can't hear what they're saying. I have to ask them to repeat it already. I know that this conversation is going to be a difficult conversation, so be really clear right off the bat. It's going to put your customers at ease before you actually get into the meat of your conversation. All right, so first impressions, extremely important. Now let's talking about extending an introduction. So this is pretty much just setting yourself up as you being in control of the call. You want your introduction to be brief, just, hi, my name is Zachary Rosa. I'm excited to be talking to you today. I'm with blah, blah, blah. Just something very brief to let them know that you're interested in talking to them, and so that they can get on to whatever they were going to ask you. Then you want it to be warm, and you want it to be really to the point. So very straightforward. Smiling and breathing is also extremely important. As a customer service representative, especially if you deal with customers over the phone, you're sitting a lot. Now, sounding happy and avoiding the shallow breathing voice is really important if you're talking over the phone, because then you start sounding breathy and less engaged, or you sound like there's something wrong with you. So sitting can make it less natural to breathe deeply. So one thing that I would strongly recommend is when you're sitting, just take a conscious note that sometimes you're just going to have shallow breaths, and you need to remember, all right, I need to be able to take these deep breaths in these conversations so I don't end up sounding like I'm disinterested or like I'm breathy. Also, smiling is going to help make your voice sound a lot happier. So just smile and breathe, and that should definitely be able to help you in your conversations with customers or in your conversation during an interview. All right, the next thing we're going to cover is focusing and clarification. So you want to respond to the customer's initial statement. That's pretty much the most important part of discussing something with a customer. It's within usually the first 10 to 30 seconds of your of the conversation with your customer, and you really, really want to take the time to listen. Don't multitask during the first 10 to 30 seconds of your conversation with a customer as the customer is explaining the issue, because you really want to get it down so that you don't end up having to ask them to repeat it, and you really understand what their problem is, especially if it's a difficult problem. And then you'll end up saving more time by just paying attention. So don't multitask during the first 10 to 30 seconds of the customer explaining the problem that it's having. All right, you want to restate the issue briefly to the customer right after the customer says it, so that the customer knows you understood what he said and now you're working on it. And then you want to explain the process to the customer. So tell the customer, here's what we're going to need to do. And then finally, if you're going to need to transfer the customer, be sure to ask the customer's permission before transferring them. All right, the last thing we're going to cover today is enunciation and projection, speaking clearly and loudly enough. Don't speak too fast. Now, some ways you can work not to speak too fast are to just mentally remind yourself to slow down. That's pretty much the only way to deal with this issue. I know when I first began public speaking, the problem that I had most of all was speaking too fast. I would speed talk through pretty much everything. And the problem was I hadn't been speaking long enough at that point to develop my ability to enunciate words correctly. So I went in and I sped talk through the whole speech and I fumbled over a majority of my words. So if you haven't practiced a lot enunciating words correctly, then speaking fast is just going to come across as you're trying to speed through the conversation. You're not interested in being with them and you just want to get it over with. So slow down, mentally remind yourself that you are a speed talker and you need to slow down. Don't mumble. And another way you can help yourself not to mumble is by not speaking fast, because then you may end up, running into a part where you just don't know what you're going to say. And so then you start mumbling. So, for example, if you're speaking too fast, you run into a part where you don't know what the next sentence is going to be. And you run into that problem because you're not speaking slow enough to allow your brain to keep up with what you're saying. So not speaking fast will actually help you not to mumble. If you don't know what's going on, again, don't mumble. Just slow down and pause for a minute, but don't try to say something if you don't know what you're going to say. And then you want to avoid extremes. So don't speak too loudly. Don't speak too softly. When you walk into a room or you're in a room with a customer or you're in a room in an interview, take note of the size of the room, the type of person you're speaking with. Try to figure out what the setting is and then adjust your volume to that setting. All right, that pretty much covers everything that we had today. If you found this video helpful, please check out our resources, ebooks, blog, podcasts, and videos at www.ecustomerserviceinterviewquestions.com. The link's included in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please subscribe.